Something that has been bothering me with how fantasy races are conventionally portrayed is they are humans but with an exaggerated trait. Well, I understand that the initial purpose of having different races in fantasies is to understand specific human experiences through a magnifying glass, to exaggerate specific traits so we can then see how its natural conclusion would be after it consumes an entire culture. But recently, or not recently, but for the longest time, I've been wondering how about moving towards creating species whose ways of understanding the world are different from ours, um, an asymmetrical evolution in relation to humanity. With that, I decided to look at the kenku, which are bird species, bird human species found in the world of Dungeons and Dragons in Faerun. The kenku are simply bird people with the ability to mimic any sound they hear. They're good at forgery. They have they have been typecasted by most societies as thieves and criminals. Beyond that, they're fun. They're fun bird people, and then they're often seen as they initially started as enemies, but they lived as simple opponents. But they became playable races. And in my design, I wanted the Kenku's design to be more alien. It's less human in a bird suit. So I had three goals. I wanted the Kenku to retain their avian features, but to justify its placement, I wanted them to have better connection to their ability to mimic sounds. And lastly, I wanted the social assumptions for theft to be justified. The key features that I'm very happy about in this design would be the eyes, the beak, and the limbs of the kangaroo. And if you break it down into its essential components, I think I've just reduced the kangaroo into those key features. So with these designs, first with the eyes, the kangaroo's eyes aren't eyes at all, but rather they're huge ear canals that leads directly into the brain, the way our eye stems has nerves that connects directly to the brain. Uh, this is because that they see the world via hearing, and it's not just echolocation. Rather, you see there are grooves in those ear holes. Those grooves gives the kenko the ability to perceive the textures of certain sounds. The sound of a hammer swinging next to copper or the hammer swinging next to iron are totally different experiences for a kenku. The sound of wind in the afternoon, the sound of wind just an hour later can almost be like entirely different phrases to a kenku's ears. The beak of the kenku has holes that allows it to produce fluting sounds. And the beak itself is not the way for the kenku to eat. There is no tongue, there is no muscle. Rather, it's a hollow, bony cavern. And the interior of the beak has various grooves and ridges that allows the kenku to produce almost any sound possible. The interior of the kenku's beak has a hollow flap of muscle that allows it to vibrate rapidly, as if the entire beak is a vocal cord, a hollow chamber of sound. And that's what allows the kenku to produce sounds without even opening its mouth. Inside the beak is a smaller inside the beak is a smaller, meatier mouth, and that matches how human mouths work. And the reason for this is because kenku have grown alongside humans as as a parasitic species almost, scavengers that follow around human settlements or live close to them, traveling in caravans, merchant caravans, or in crowded cities. Because to the kenku, their original homeland would be large sequoia-like trees where they make where some still remain, but most of them have taken to a nomadic lifestyle. And in so doing, the kenku have developed a reputation for being thieves. They they enjoy the textures of certain sounds. Yes, and that means that they often collect strange items, valuable items even, often without the permission of the owners. And so, Kenku don't really have a concept of ownership the way we do. When Kenku try to claim an object, they would change or deform its surface to have specific grooves that will produce a certain sound. And in that way, any other Kenku who hears uh, the the resonance of the object will know that it has been claimed by by another Kenku. Most objects that people carry don't have the same grooves, and so they think it's free real estate. And most Kenku who don't grow up in cities, or those who have been left to their own devices out in the wild, will have vastly different ideas of ownership from the way humans do. Most Kenkus have different ideas for trade. Kenkus value objects that produce unique resonances. And what may appear valuable to a human, like a gold coin, might be useless to a Kenku, which has heard that same sound thousands of times before. Kenku value rare sounds, not just because it's pleasing to them, but because it's important for their reproductive cycle. When Kenku grow up, it is an instinctive need for them to look for different sounds. The rarer, the better. The experience attached to it is also important. Once they feel that they have acquired enough useful or unique sounds, they would go to a place that has a natural echoing quality, like a mountain, like a hollow cave, or a tunnel, or an abandoned building. Then they will begin what is called a birthing song. The song will be comprised of the different unique sounds that the Kenku has chosen for this purpose. Once sung, this process successfully creates another Kenku, the parent will never be able to make these sounds again. This is because the birthing song and the new Kenku will be the physical representations of the Kenku's experience. The birthing song is the Kenku relaying how it got the sound and how they acquired it, the journey. And it is a Kenku's journey throughout life, their lived experience. That is the one thing that is genuine in everything that they do. Everything can be acquired through mimicry except the experience that they had. And the birthing song is a way to cement this, as proof that the Kenku were real, that their experiences were real. So in the birthing song, the Kenku will keep repeating the song and wait for the natural landscape to echo, returning the song back to the Kenku. They will do this for as long as it takes. When it's done, the last echo will not have come from the environment, but from a newly formed Kenku, fully realized and born. And then the parent has the responsibility of teaching the Kenku about social mores, about how to interpret various sounds, and which sounds are valuable and which are not. Kenku born from more common sounds are born sickly and weak, while those born from unique sounds are stronger and have a larger capacity, have a larger memory for more auditory sounds. This is why Kenku value seemingly random objects, and their homes are these hoarders' paradises of various trash items. And in so doing, people often have this conception of Kenku as hoarders for no apparent reason. But little did they know that these stacks of items contain unique resonances that will be necessary for the continuation of their species. The Kenku's limbs are thin and are made of hollow bone. They are hollow because Kenku are made from sound, not because they are designed for flight. The hollow bones of the Kenku resonates with any sound that happens nearby. Kenkus literally have the echoing spaces, the echoing silence, or the echoing void as the core component of their body's structure. The Kenku's hands are larger and so are some of their limbs. You'll see that there's a disproportionate length between some of their limbs, but overall, each individual limb of a kenku is far longer than any humans. Their, their body is covered in a strange fur feather hybrid, where it's a stack of fur that is connected to a single strand, like a large cilia. And these branch out into fractal patterns. When threatened, these patterns block together to create curving shapes that acts as megaphones that amplifies a kenku's ability to hear or to create sound. When at rest, these patterns break apart and act as mufflers, keeping the kenku's movements quiet. Kenku communicate using silences. For a species so adept at replicating any sound they hear, it's almost funny, right? However, the spaces that they leave, the emptiness, is how they communicate. So if you catch a kenku speaking in English but in a strangely stilted way, ending in almost every wrong syllable, or cutting syllables into individual letters almost in a staccato speaking pattern, that means that they're probably having an entirely separate conversation with a nearby kenku, while also talking to a human. Another way for kenku to communicate with each other would be through the use of tapping. Their fingers are thin and bony, and that allows them to create precise tapping sounds. And this communication depends on the frequency of the tapping, which is reminiscent of Morse code, but the added layer of complexity comes in when you consider the material that the kenku will be tapping on. Tapping on wood and tapping on metal would, in our conception, be almost like tapping or speaking in different accents or speaking in different languages entirely. It is easy to understand why there is a almost natural dislike for kenku. Imagine, if you will, a random hooded stranger appearing to you, 4 feet, 5 feet in size, asking for directions in the voice of a best friend that you had just recently been talking to. Or a quiet lab assistant wearing a plague doctor's mask, suddenly telling you in an accent similar to your own, but perfect in every way without any idiosyncrasy, how your experiment could be further improved. Kenku are uncanny in their ability to perfectly replicate voices and sounds, but are alien in their stature and in their behavior that's enough to activate any alarm bells in a person. When in public or in spaces with humans, the kenku naturally fold their body to appear non-threatening, and they can appear as short as 4 feet. However, when in their natural habitat or in their ancient sequoia tree dwellings, they extend up to their full height of 8 feet. The kenku's limbs can bend at extraordinary angles. There's not, since the feet their limbs are mostly muscle and bone. There is nothing else, so they can bend to extraordinary angles. They use this length to be expert climbers and to move quickly from place to place. Other details: a group of kenku is called a chorus of kenku, and they often travel in caravans or in large sequoia tree structures. I would like to thank Monster Garden and the community that they have created for giving me the motivation to start this channel. And I would like to thank my friends and to you, the viewer, for giving me a moment of your time. Thank you.